Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for caring enough. Thank you for caring enough about the future of our country to be here today. We are meeting in solidarity with similar groups in all 50 states at over 430 rallies and marches this weekend. Some are live, some are virtual. You know, COVID. These events honor the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and reclaim our insistence on justice for all. As we're about to cast our ballots in a very unusual time, we must remember that voting is an expression of a person's worth and dignity. Every citizen that is able to vote should make sure they do. I have complete faith in our town clerk's office right there, that they are doing a great job, and the Secretary of State, they're working overtime to make sure that all of our ballots are safe and counted, no matter how they're cast. You're probably going to see cars today driving through here when a person puts their ballot in that box. We can all pause in the middle of our program and cheer when somebody votes.
All right.
Yeah. If you haven't voted yet, study your options. Look at the website for your town or the mass.gov to get more information. 100 years ago, our country passed the 19th Amendment to ratify the rights of women to be voters. In honor of those suffragists who struggled for decades and every woman who's voted since then, please don't let COVID-19 or apathy waste your voice. While this 100th anniversary is a big milestone to celebrate, we can keep improving. Women's equality has made progress, but we don't have a level playing field yet. The gender pay gap still exists, and it's even worse for women of color. Reproductive rights are in jeopardy, and maternal mortality is rising. COVID-19 has exposed how many women in the workplace are either underpaid or not paid at all, or have been forced to leave the workplace due to trying to juggle their family, maybe homeschooling, or personal health risk and trying to make a living. According to the new Oxford American Dictionary, patriotism is not just a love of your country, but a vigorous support of one's country. Citizens who belong to any political party can agree that we are living in unprecedented time, and that requires attention and action instead of fatigue and lethargy. I encourage you all to use these next 2 weeks. Volunteer your time, donate money, contact your representatives, and let them know what you think. There are millions of apps and texting banks and yay! There's still time in the next 2 weeks for you to take action to help keep our government going. Today, we're pleased to welcome our honored guests. You will hear from our Board of Select member Karen Connolly, activist Joan Barry, playwright and director Lisa Rafferty, local Scituate citizen Dina Dre, state representative Joan Meschino, and candidate for state senate Meg Wheeler. Each one has an important topic to share with you. As Justice Ginsburg once said, fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. Please note that we are extremely serious about COVID protection today. You must keep your mask on and you must stay away from each other. I'm so proud of you all being at your flag in a good socially distanced way. Thank you very much. Don't roam around if you can help it. I want to send my thanks out to all the people who helped today, my family, my friends, all our speakers. I've met so many people through organizing this event that I'd never laid eyes on before, and now I feel very close to in my heart. There are a lot of political activists here in town who are really excited about making a difference. So I want to just thank you so much. The last thing I need to do is give a shout out to a gentleman from town named Lyle Nyberg. I'm not sure if Mr. Nyberg is here today. Hi. Mr. Nyberg wrote a book entitled Summer Suffragists. You can buy it at Buttonwood, and it would be a fascinating read for any of you who are interested in the women's movement, who have roots here in Scituate because it's a very local book. I encourage everybody to get a copy of this and enjoy it. And now, I would like to introduce Karen Connolly. Karen is a member of the Scituate Board of Select Persons. Her parents moved here to Scituate back in 1965. She's a former corporate communications executive. She and her husband Kevin bought their home here in Scituate 25 years ago, and they have one son, Chris. Before Karen comes to the microphone, we're going to be led in a chant. I hope you'll all participate. We have our cheerleaders right here. There'll be a little music. Feel free to enjoy, because again, as I've said, I've anchored you all to a flag, and I'm not kidding, but you do get to dance and boogie a little to the songs. And right after that, Karen is going to come speak. Thank you very much.
People united will never be divided. The people united will never be divided.
People united will never be divided.
The people united will never be divided.
People united will never be divided.
The people united will never be divided.
People united will never be divided.
Hello everyone, welcome to this Scituate Town Hall on this beautiful day, at least for part of it, and aren't we lucky that we got the good weather. I appreciate everyone coming today, and I would like to say a few words about civic engagement. How can you get involved? Well, of course there are rallies like this, and clearly you are civically engaged citizens, and I certainly appreciate it. But Scituate, like other towns, has many boards and committees that rely on volunteers. In fact, in Scituate, we have 45 boards and committees. Some of them only have 3 members, some of them have as many as 11 or 13. You always have to have an odd number. But I will say it's been inspiring to see the number of people who have been coming forward over the past month or so to volunteer to be on our boards. And we are just in the process of starting up a diversity and inclusion committee, and we had Zoom interviews the other night, and they were really amazing people. So I appreciate that people do step forward. And if you haven't stepped forward, please do. All you have to do is get a form from the town administrator's office, and you can look at how many different types of boards and committees we have. You should volunteer to work for a candidate for local office. And I think it bears my telling you that Scituate elections are nonpartisan, which means that if you don't have a D or a U or an R by your name or whatever other party you might be, you simply run as you. And over the years, I have, in my volunteering to be on various committees, I've never known if the person sitting to my right or my left is a Democrat or a Republican or something else. And it really helps local government work. I also want to say that working on an override campaign is extremely important. That's the only way we get a new school, a new public safety building, a renovated library, and a new senior center. Without overrides, we do not have them. In my experience, it takes a lot of work to get an override passed, especially when it includes, and they always do include, proposing to raise people's taxes. And it takes a lot of volunteers to make those campaigns work. It's very possible that in the not too distant future, Scituate may be looking at an override, especially to build a new elementary school. So I would encourage everyone to please get involved. It takes a lot of people and a lot of work. Overrides have to pass first a town meeting, and then they have to pass a ballot. So they're very important. The other thing I'd like to suggest is please, if you can, attend town meeting. We've got one coming up on November 16th. Normally, the fall town meetings aren't quite as controversial as the spring town meetings because normally we're cleaning things up in terms of bills and everything in November. But the town meeting is the legislative body of the town. In other words, we don't do anything unless town meeting approves of it. So it's very important, if you can, to to attend town meeting. I know that people have suggested we should try to do it remotely, and before COVID, it was always, well, we really can't. Well, I think we're beginning to discover that perhaps we can. So we'll keep you posted on that. I would also like to suggest that you consider running for office. In the 384 years that Scituate has been around, the first time we had a woman majority Board of Selectmen, and that is what our name is right now, was 2 years ago. We are now majority woman board. You can do it. If I did it, and I was 64 years old and I had never run for elective office in my life, if I could do it, you could do it. So I encourage, it doesn't matter if you're 18, it doesn't matter if you're 65 or 95. Please consider running for office. We always need good candidates. And there are a number of boards that are elected, and I'll just briefly say, it's the Board of Selectmen, the School Committee, the Planning Board, the Board of Assessors, the Library Trustees, and the Housing Authorities. Those are all elected boards, so I would encourage anyone who's interested to take a look and see. Finally, of course, vote. Right? Vote. And I would like to extend my gratitude to Kathy Gardner, our town clerk. She's a wonderful town clerk. She is completely willing to help anyone with anything that has to do with her office, including birth, death, marriage certificates. She keeps us all in compliance with the ethics rules that the state has for all elected and appointed officials. She's terrific, and I am completely confident that the election in Scituate, no matter whatever happens anywhere else, your vote will count, and it will be a fair and free election. I would suggest, if you haven't tried it before, to go on the Secretary of State's website. You can just Google trackmyballot.ma or Mass, and what you will see is your name and everyone registered in your household will come up, and you can find out if your ballot has been received, processed, etc. So I think it should give people some comfort that their votes will count. So I want to thank you all for coming today, and now it is my privilege to introduce, Joan Berkeloni Barry. She has been advocating for young women in the United States caught up in prostitution. It's a very serious subject, and I think it needs to be discussed. Her audiences, ranging from college students to healthcare professionals, get a glimpse into the very issues that underlie prostitution: poverty, gender inequality, and race disparity. Joan's collaboration with organizations in Massachusetts that mentor and provide safe housing for prostituted and trafficked survivors sustains her mission of educating people to the raw realities of this criminal industry. Please join in welcoming Joan.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for showing up. It's very appreciated. So I'm going to start with some definitions because this can get confusing. There are many actors here. I'm going to start with pimps and traffickers. Pimps and traffickers, it's the same thing. They coerce girls into prostitution. They trick them in with promises of jobs and safety and love. They groom them, they sell them, they control them. Some would say they own them, but they control them. The girls who are, and young women who are owned by traffickers and pimps are referred to as trafficked. And the trafficked young women represent the majority of women in prostitution. Women who are on their own, they make their own money. They are not owned by a trafficker or a pimp. These women are referred to as prostituted. We used to use the word prostitute, but that made her the whole face of this criminal industry. So we now call her prostituted. Women on their own, prostituted women, are not controlled. They wind up in prostitution because they lack choices. Essentially, they're surviving. Whether you are prostituted or trafficked, prostituted on your own or trafficked, controlled, it's all prostitution. We're beginning to use the word prostitution more often now than trafficking, because trafficking doesn't tell the story. Trafficking is a process. It's a method of finding girls, coercing them in and selling them. This process leads to prostitution, which is the exchange of sex for money. That's the reality of prostitution. It is the exchange of sex for money. This reality is dangerous, degrading, and harmful to women. Our cultural acceptance of this activity leads to how we regard women and treat all women. Prostitution can happen anywhere, and it does. It can happen here. But the vast majority of young girls and women getting into prostitution do not come from stable white suburbs. They come from poverty, abuse, foster care, and homelessness. They are vulnerable. They attach to those who are strong, who offer them love and safety. The day-to-day life in prostitution is down, dirty, and violent. The person responsible for this violence, we never talk about him. He is the very person who keeps prostitution alive. He is the buyer. We call him John, the John. The violence we talk about in prostitution happens with him, not the pimps, not the traffickers that we hear so much about. Yes, pimps and traffickers get very rough with these girls, particularly during the grooming period. But Johns, as one prostituted woman said, prostitution today is like domestic violence on steroids. Johns are primarily privileged, middle and upper class white, married men. On his side, he has money, power, status, respectability, and a very well-kept secret. On her side, nothing. There is a wall of silence and invisibility around the John. This silence, this invisibility protects him and shifts the blame and the shame onto the women. It's time that we brought the John into the conversation. When we bring him into the conversation, we then have the opportunity to talk about prostitution. Not pimps, not traffickers, and not the process, but the reality, the psychological, emotional, and physical harm that this is to women, and the other reality of racism and gender inequality. We will never stop advocating or mentoring or rescuing the young girls and women caught up in prostitution. But to put an end to this, we must talk not only about the vulnerable, but about the powerful. So I invite you to join us in speaking up about prostitution and the reality that it is. Thank you very much. I want to just tell you too that I have some handouts to give out. You can find me, I'll be over by the voting box. And I don't want to leave them on a table, they'll blow away. But there's lots of very good information there on some websites you might be interested in. There's a website for parents. It's all about pornography, and it's all, if you have kids, you really want to look into this. It tells you how to communicate with your kids about this. It's rampant, pornography. There's one about an artist. If you're an artist and you want to donate to some of the safe houses, they're around. I'm collecting art from anybody who just loves to paint anything or any type of medium that you like. So please take a look at that. So I would like to introduce Lisa. Oh, Lisa Rafferty. Lisa Rafferty is a playwright, director, and producer. Lisa creates documentary plays which celebrate heroic women and men, including the unforgettable First Lady Betty Ford, 9/11 hero Wells Crofter, and her newest piece on the powerful women of Congress known as The Squad. Today she will share an excerpt from her play Onward, Votes for Women. Lisa? Wait, that's Lisa. Okay.
Hello, everybody. I have a super loud voice, so tell me, am I too loud or is this okay? Lovely to see your beautiful faces on this gorgeous day. A year ago, I received a commission from the Associates of the Boston Public Library to create a documentary play to honor the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. That became Onward, Votes for Women, which uses verbatim excerpts from historical documents and other sources to represent the 70 years of the battle for women's rights, beginning in 1848 in Seneca Falls, New York, and culminating in the passage of the 19th Amendment on August 20, 1920. I know, right? We just celebrated this. Our world's premiere was slated for March 19th of this year. After 3 rehearsals at the Boston Public Library, we shut down on the same day as Broadway. We have postponed and postponed, but stay tuned because we will persevere and hope to offer the show, which is free to the public, next June. The all-female trans cast became very close through the process of bringing this original work to the stage. It was certainly a time of national political upheaval back in 2019 when we started, or as I refer to it, the before times. And we took inspiration from the strong and powerful suffragists who overcame obstacle after obstacle after obstacle and marched for their rights again and again and again. These women and men organized, protested, gave speeches, lobbied, petitioned, picketed, and even went to jail for their cause, which was then and is now our cause. Thousands of women, thank you. Thousands of women around the United States and abroad joined the battle. Suffragists of color, going back to Sojourner Truth. Hello, voter. Spoke up. Suffragists of color like Sojourner Truth spoke up, spoke out, and inspired so many with their actions and words. Hello, skater. We're all here. We're all a community. Mary Church Terrell was an extraordinary woman. She was a charter member of the NAACP. She was an early advocate for civil rights and the suffrage movement. She spoke at the National American Women's Association, Suffrage Association in Washington, D.C. in 1898. Here to share one of her powerful speeches is our own Dina Dre.
50 years ago, a meeting such as this, planned, conducted, and addressed by women, would have been an impossibility. Few sane men would have predicted that either a slave or one of his descendants would in this century address such an audience in the nation's capital at the invitation of women represented by the highest, broadest, best type of womanhood. When Lucretia Mott, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucy Stone, and Susan B. Anthony began that agitation by which colleges were now open to women, their sisters who groaned in bondage had little reason to hope. During those days of depression and despair, colored women were not only refused admittance to institutions of learning, but the laws of the states made it a crime to teach them to read. But from the day their minds were released from the darkness of ignorance to which for more than 200 years they had been doomed, colored women have forged steadily ahead. The progress made by colored women has never been surpassed by that of any people in the history of the world. Many a heroine, of whom the world will never hear, has thus sacrificed to her race, amid surroundings and in the face of provisions which only martyrs can tolerate and bear. By banding themselves together in the interest of education and morality, by adopting the most practical and useful means to this end, colored women have in 30 short years become great power for good.
That was really beautiful, Dina. Just one of the amazingly powerful and inspiring speeches that were happening for over 70 years by suffragists of color and by others. And as you may know, Dina grew up here in Scituate. She went to Scituate Public Schools and is now raising her 2 children here. And it's important for her, as it is for all of us, for her to be here and be in this community and champion these causes that we all strongly believe in. So thank you again for that beautiful work. My agent will be calling your agent about future work in my place. There were many instances where the odds seemed overwhelmed against the struggle for the right to vote. But nevertheless, these suffragists persisted. Finally, on a summer day in Tennessee, the state legislature voted by a majority of 1 to ratify, and the battle was won. Although the passage of the 19th Amendment guaranteed all women the right to vote, many states created roadblocks which prevented suffragists of color from voting in the presidential election of 1920, a struggle which continues today. Having secured their rights as active participants in our civic duty, the leaders of the suffrage movement turned their attention to the next important battle, which was adoption and ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. Alice Paul launched the fight, which was carried through by fearless feminists, including Shirley Chisholm and Betty Ford. And of course, the inimitable and influential Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is here to say,
As I said earlier, all across the country this weekend, there are more than 430 gatherings like this. They are all being held to honor the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Her death was a great loss for our country. Despite being only 5 foot 1 inches tall, the justice made a very large impact on the United States. She was a tireless, unapologetic champion for gender equality. She was on the Supreme Court when it ensured rights for the LGBTQ community. She helped fight for pay equity. She was a champion of safe, affordable health care and affirmed the dignity of all lives. No wonder she got the nickname Notorious RBG, borrowed from the late rapper Biggie Smalls, known as Notorious B.I.G. We can all learn from Ruth and mimic her when we speak truth to power. She was a pioneer who said that real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. Some things that Ruth Bader Ginsburg is known to have said. It is certainly a fundamental human right that men and women should have the chance to pursue whatever is their God-given talent and not be held back simply because they're male or female. The Equal Rights Amendment is an expression of that idea, and I think for that reason it belongs in the Constitution. Justice Ginsburg also added, who will take the responsibility for bringing up the next generation, some of whom we have here today? Women will have achieved true equality when men share with them the responsibility of bringing up the next generation. On January 27th, pardon me, I forgot to rehearse. Thank you, Lisa. And your agent isn't going to call my agent, are they?
no, they still are. This is a great thing about live theater people. I'm just going to finish, and then Martha's going to come back and introduce our next honored speaker. On January 27, 2020, the state of Virginia became the 38th state to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. The battle continues for rights for women, right, to this day. I'm proud to be part of the Scituate community. I have fought for the schools and our town through several override battles with many of the people here today. I am inspired by the heroic women leaders around the country and around the world, and I continue to write plays about their example to us all. Please vote. Vote tomorrow. Vote next week. Make yourself heard. Carry the strength and power of the women who fought for our rights then and now with you today and always. Thank you.
Please join me in welcoming Representative Joan Meschino. Joan is the state representative for the 3rd Plymouth District, which includes Cohasset, Hingham, Hall, and our poor brothers and sisters to the north, Scituate. Joan serves on the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities and Energy, the Joint Committee on Veterans and Federal Affairs, the Joint Committee on Technology and Intergovernmental Affairs, and the House Committee on Post Audit and Oversight. She is also appointed to the Metropolitan Beaches Commission and the Ocean Advisory Commission, which makes a lot of sense because she's from Hull.
Good afternoon. So let me just pause and begin by thanking our organizer, Martha Cook, today for her leadership and for her hosts for their leadership. It is so hard to put this kind of an event together and to do it safely. Thank you all for social distancing and having your masks on. It is really, it's hard enough to do it, and to do it during a pandemic really does. It's amazing, and we congratulate you on your success. So Martha asked me today to talk about leadership. Women are powerful. To quote RBG, women belong in all places where decisions are being made, and it should not be that women are the exception. We have made tremendous strides in our public and private lives during the past 100 years since the suffrage movement and the right to vote. Now women lead in all aspects of their own lives: business, nonprofits, our households, arts and sciences, education, community organizations, school groups, and of course in public leadership. In 2016, Mrs. Clinton was the first woman presidential candidate on a ballot. That was amazing. Elizabeth Warren is our U.S. Senator. 4 out of the 5 mass constitutional offices are held by women. 30% of the state legislature are women, and that number is growing. My own district, 4 towns, I have 4 towns, and each of those towns are chaired by a woman, a fabulous woman at that, including here in Scituate. And of course, as Karen mentioned, Scituate has a woman majority select board. That, ladies, is impressive. Yeah, you should clap for that one. Sadly, though, our fight is far from over, and the reaction to the 2016 presidential election was, to my way of thinking, a brutal reminder to the barriers and the gender bias that women face every day. And I can tell you, from my own experience as a candidate, that the misogyny was palpable on, oh yay, a voter. Everyone clap for the voter. But I can tell you that the misogyny was palpable on the campaign trail that year. And that moment exposed deeply embedded systemic discrimination in our law and in our society. We've already heard some people talk about the economic disparities and the vulnerabilities, not the least of which is the pay disparities. And every day we see new barriers to healthcare, in particular reproductive freedom, popping up across the nation. And even our very language, all designed to suppress women's potential, to conspire to crush women's empowerment and dreams and aspirations from an early age. And I'd like you all to consider today the phrase, run like a girl. We all understand that that is actually an insult and that that's how it's intended. And I would encourage you all to watch a short video by a classmate of mine, Lauren Greenfield, that she did in partnership with Always. It's just a quick search, you'll pull it up if you do Lauren Greenfield, Run Like a Girl, and Always. And it's short, so I encourage you all to watch it. It begins with older kids just goofing around on camera in response to the filmmaker asking them to show what you think it means to hit, to throw, or to run like a girl. But then the filmmaker turns and she transitions to an 8-year-old girl, and the little girl looks up at her and answers with great earnestness. Run like a girl means to run as hard as I can. Imagine that, 8 years old. Isn't that amazing? Just to have that confidence is really, really wonderful. But as I said, the fight is far from over. Still, I am hopeful. In 2017, as a newly elected representative, I stood with my sister legislators on the stage at the first Women's March, and I looked out over a sea of pink that flooded every corner of Boston Common. And I have to tell you, the swell of joy and energy and community and the potential of all of those women and girls in that moment, it was electric. And that moment energized every woman's voice. Now, I've been very fortunate to walk a path well trod by the women who have, of the generation have come before me. And now I see it as my responsibility, and quite frankly, it's yours, to lead, to push further, and to inspire the women and the girls who come behind us. And so I came here today to say to all of you, we still have a lot of work to do, but as women, we are powerful. Let's keep at it and run like a girl. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Meg Wheeler. Meg is a former CPA with an accounting and an international tax background. She holds an MS and an MBA degrees from Northeastern University, and she serves on the Cohasset Advisory Committee and is running for a seat on the Massachusetts State Senate. Please join me in welcoming a fabulous woman, Meg Wheeler.
I came here today because I wanted to share one message with you all. Women hold the power to change the world. 4 years ago, on a very, very cold January day, I was 5 months pregnant. I drove down to DC, donned my pink pussy hat, and marched for hours with my fellow womankind to protest the injustices that had been done and the injustices that were sure to come. 4 hours ago, I gathered my family, put on my rain gear, went down to town hall, and voted for myself for state senate. 100 years ago, I would not have had this opportunity. A few years ago, I had the privilege of interviewing Krista, the creator of the Pink Pussy Hat. I asked her how she turned a small knitting circle project into a massive movement spanning multiple countries and creating a literal sea of pink hats worn by millions. She told me how she was on a road trip with her family one day in mid-November of 2016, just over a week after the election, and she wanted to send a message to the world. She didn't think about how she would do it or if it was even possible. She didn't have celebrity friends or a huge audience. All she knew was that she wanted to have 1.17 million women wearing pink hats, enough to fill the National Mall in Washington. Thank you very much for voting today. Thank you. Thank you. Krista wanted her message, a bold statement of solidarity for women's rights, to be heard loud and clear. In her words, she said, "I wanted to create a sea of pink." In just over 2 months, Krista and a handful of her friends did just that. Over 100,000 women downloaded the Pussy Hat pattern. Over 500,000 attended the Women's March in DC, and more than 5 million people participated worldwide, many donning their hats. Thank you so much for voting. I like it. Let's get it in. Well, it's beautiful weather out. Good time to vote. It's always a good time to vote. Krista's message to me was loud and clear as well. The power of one woman knows no bounds. That power starts with your voice, and it extends to that ballot box. I was asked to speak here today about the power of voting and women running for office. The power of voting. In a world where the popular vote winner doesn't always win the election, where voter suppression is at an all-time high, where expanded access to vote is tainted by false claims of voter fraud, it can often feel as though there is no power in voting. I asked my mom this morning why she votes. She said, because if I didn't vote, I wouldn't change anything. I asked her if she ever felt like her vote didn't matter, didn't count. She said no. She said, my vote counts and your vote counts, and together, our votes can make a difference. The power of voting. One voice, one vote. The power of the collective. Just let him go through. Every single one of the icons that we honor today, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Gloria Steinem, Alice Walker, Angela Davis, bell hooks, started where we are now. They started with the power of their voice and the power of their vote. The world needs your voice. The world needs your vote. The more we get involved, the more we win. The more we win, the more progress we make, and the more progress we make, the more we change the world. And it all starts with one vote. But it doesn't end there. When asked how many women on the Supreme Court would be enough, Justice Ginsburg gave us the audacity to believe that those in power can look like us when she said, when there are 9. Shirley Chisholm, Geraldine Ferraro, and Hillary Clinton gave us the audacity to believe that women could be president, could run for president, and could win. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, and Cori Bush gave us the audacity to run for office and to win against entrenched politicians who stopped representing our interests long ago. That's why it can't just end with our votes. As women, we have to run and run again and run again because we will win. We hold the power to change the world. Every single one of us here, you and me, each one of us has a voice, each one of us has a vote. Together, we have the power of the collective. 4 hours ago, I voted for myself for state senate. Never for one moment forget that you have the power to change the world. Thank you so much for having me here today. Please make a plan to vote, and please make a plan to run. So I now have the pleasure of bringing up Stephanie Burke, who is, I'm going off script here, I hope that's okay. But Stephanie is an incredible community member and activist and has been really wonderful in speaking out on a lot of the issues that we care very much about. So Stephanie, you're up.
Hey everyone, so a couple things before I just conclude this incredible rally here. One, if you have your phones and you want to look up the lyrics to I Am Woman, we'll be joining in song to conclude this wonderful rally. I also want to say that Eagle Flag in Cohasset has been kind enough to donate all the flags here, so you're welcome to take your flag as you exit. So 100 years ago, after the 19th Amendment was ratified, Alice Stokes Paul said, "It's incredible to me that any woman should consider the fight for full equality won. It is just beginning." And she was right. Because a century later, we continue to walk together for freedom. We continue to walk together for justice. And today, we have a woman who knows that and took the time and dedicated herself to safely gather us together in a very pivotal point in our history, not just as citizens, but as women and the men who support them. And I want to take this opportunity for us all to give a huge round of applause to Martha Cook for all the hard work and dedication she put into this day so we could safely come together and make history here in Scituate. Thank you so much, Martha, for bringing us all together today. Earlier this year, we lost Helen Reddy, artist and singer of I Am Woman. Before her passing, and decades after she had written I Am Woman, she said, "Oh yes, I am wise, but it's wisdom born of pain." That phrase has never seemed to lose its urgency. She wrote the song because the song she was looking for didn't exist. She said, "I thought about all these strong women in my family who had gone through the Depression and world wars and drunken, abusive husbands. But there was nothing in music that reflected that. The only songs at the time were I Feel Pretty or that dreadful song, Born a Woman." She decided I was going to have to write it myself. So as we conclude this wonderful, beautiful rally, and you join us in singing her song, our song, I encourage you to think about what doesn't exist. And I want, it's okay, but I encourage you to think about what doesn't exist. And I encourage you to think about what's yet to be written for our future. And I hope that not only this song and her words inspire you to write it, but look around at all the voices joining in this song with you. And I hope these voices let you know you have a force to help you achieve it. Thank you all for coming today.